Hello everybody, welcome to the Base Network. I'm your host, the Cope Crusader. Today, I am seething. I am pissed. I am crying, pissing, and shitting all at the same time. What could get me so angry? The only poison that's worse than all. Hypocrisy. But poison's bitter, so I wouldn't drink it. But the sweet poison's the one that gets you. And that sweet poison's coming from someone that I used to hold in high regard, Ben Shapiro. I made a video on why I thought he has dropped from his throne of debate lordness. King debate bro. Lord and obliterator are using words.
Give me everything you got for this wet-ass P-word. I mean, a bucket and a mop? This sounds like there's something that is going on here that is not biologically normal.
I think he dropped from that position after the whole Candace Owens situation. But now, I see a level of hypocrisy that, quite honestly, is unacceptable. As someone who's built their entire career off freedom of speech, for some reason, a specific topic deletes all of that logic. If you couldn't tell by now, today we're going to be talking about the Mahmood Kaleel situation. Mahmood Kaleel was deported by the Trump administration for being anti-Semitic. The proof they display in a 2-page memo given by the Department of Homeland Security that doesn't show any evidence. We'll get into that. But I mainly wanted to go over Ben Shapiro's reaction to the situation, and it's very disheartening from someone who built their entire political will off of content creators like Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro was one of the first content creators I used to watch, and I used to repeat his arguments. I thought he was one of the smartest people ever. He was a propagator for freedom of speech. Facts don't care about your feelings. Let's hash it out. Let's debate. But for some reason, this specific topic, Ben Shapiro throws away all logic, all morality, all consistency for a foreign state. Let's get into it. I want to watch his reaction to it because, again, this is something that it makes me disgusted to watch. The pure hypocrisy from Ben Shapiro.
I'm confused as to why this is even an issue. Again, we're not talking about American citizens who are participating in speech we don't like. We are talking about people who are here as guests of the United States or trying to earn their way into citizenship. This notion that they magically ought to be treated exactly the same as natural-born American citizens or people who have already earned their citizenship is like, if that's the case, then why do we even have immigration standards at all? Maybe we just shouldn't. Maybe being a terror supporter should just not be on your immigration application. This is all absurd. Marco Rubio had the best response to this yesterday. Secretary of State Rubio has invoked his power as the Secretary of State to say that this guy is a foreign policy threat, which he's a member of a group that actively called for armed uprising against Western civilization. Here is Secretary of State Rubio yesterday.
When you come to the United States as a visitor, which is what a visa is, which is how this individual entered this country, as on a visitor's visa, okay, you are here as a visitor. We can deny you that visa. We can deny you that if you tell us when you apply, hi, I'm trying to get into the United States on a student visa. I am a big supporter of Hamas, a murderous, barbaric group that kidnaps children, that teenage girls, that takes hostages, that allows them to die in captivity, that returns more bodies than live hostages. If you tell us that you are in favor of a group like this, and if you tell us when you apply for your visa, and by the way, I intend to come to your country as a student, and rile up all kinds of anti-Jewish student, anti-Semitic activities. I intend to shut down your universities. If you told us all these things when you applied for a visa, we would deny your visa. I hope we would. If you actually end up doing that, once you're in this country on such a visa, we will revoke it. And if you end up having a green card, not citizenship, but a green card as a result of that visa while you're here in those activities, we're going to kick you out.
This seems inarguable, and yet Democrats are somehow finding a way to argue with all of this. The lawyer...
He likes to throw in Democrats there. I'm assuming it's false opposition because there's a lot of Republicans who disagree fundamentally with the fact that you can deport a green card holder for speech. Again, put it into context. He's a student, right? He's a student at a university. Ben Shapiro, I'm going to show clips of Ben Shapiro explaining why you can't go and start defining hate, but that's essentially what they're doing. They're defining hate, they're defining anti-Semitism, saying he's anti-Semitic, and deporting him based off of political opinions. Now again, they make some pretty heavy accusations. He is a terrorist supporter. He is riling up students to be anti-Semitic, right? Let's put a pin in that. Sure, I can agree if there was someone who was coming in from a foreign state let's say they were getting money from the foreign state, or they were pushing propaganda for the foreign state. You could somehow prove that they were colluding with people from the foreign country in order to push propaganda in America. We can make an argument that that could somewhat affect national security, but that's not the case that we have. The case we have, a green card holder who has been through an American college, who is married to an American citizen, who has a baby who is an American citizen, or will be. I think the wife is pregnant, like 8 months pregnant when this happened. And the crime that he supposedly committed was being anti-Semitic. Now, luckily, right, the DHS was told to give some proof of his anti-Semitic behavior, and this is what they came up with. I have an article here from NPR. Trump administration lays out the evidence for deporting activist Mahmood Kaleel. When pressed for evidence about why activist Mahmood Kaleel was arrested by immigration authorities last month, the Department of Homeland Security shared a 2-page memo from Secretary of State Marco Rubio that accused the Columbia University graduate student of participating in anti-Semitic protest in disruptive activities. That memo is at the heart of the Trump administration's case against Kaleel. According to his authorities, the memo, which was undated, was released by Kaleel's legal team on Thursday, the date after the Trump administration submitted it into an immigration court filing. It does not accuse Kaleel of any crime, but Rubio writes that Kaleel's continued presence in the United States would have a potentially serious adverse foreign consequences and would compromise a compelling U.S. foreign policy interest. Kaleel's lawyers say that the government has provided no additional evidence that explains the basis for Rubio's conclusion. 2 pages, that's it, said Mark Van der Hout. Ugh, weird name there. One of Kaleel's lawyers. There is no evidence there at all. Kaleel and his lawyers also disputed the charges of anti-Semitism. What is anti-Semitism? Van der Hout said during a Zoom meeting with the reporter on Thursday. It is criticizing Israel and the United States for the slaughter that is going on in Gaza and Palestine. That is the case, what it's about. Yes, that is what it's about. Because Ben Shapiro would be able to explain to you how people are able to use words like anti-Semitism, racism, homophobia, transphobia in order to create missiles that are able to instantly obliterate any argument you have. So, for example, Ben Shapiro would know this very well, during the Black Lives Matter protest, what was the one instant secret technique that Black Lives Matter protesters were able to use to obliterate any conservative arguments about police brutality? You're racist. That's racist. Systemic racism. They don't have to provide any actual proof. It's just a word that we have been conditioned to hate. We hate racists. We hate homophobes. We hate transphobes. We hate people who hate, right? We're taught that since we're children. So people know you're able to use these words that basically mean you hate inserted group in order to obliterate any arguments they don't like. In the same way, the state of Israel and the Trump administration is using claims of anti-Semitism in order to obliterate any arguments criticizing the state of Israel for the campaign that they're doing in Gaza right now. Or criticizing the Trump administration eroding First Amendment rights for a foreign nation. Because that's what it is. Us, as Americans, as an American citizen, look at your blood, red, white, and blue, America, freedom, yeah, your rights are being eroded for a foreign state. Your rights of freedom of speech. Ben Shapiro would be able to explain to you why it's a terrible thing for, let's say after the insurrection, let's say after January 6th, when Biden comes into office, the Burger King crown is on his head, and he says, these insurrectionists, these terrorists, anyone who supports them, I mean, they're terrorist supporters. So if you support Donald Trump and you're on a green card, deported, gone. Oh, if you're a visa holder and you support Donald Trump, you're gone because you're supporting terrorism. Didn't you just see what happened? Look at what just happened. They just invaded the Capitol. They're creating an insurrection of our government, and you're supporting that. You're supporting terrorism. Don't see how that's a slippery slope? But for some reason, when it comes to Israel, Ben Shapiro is completely blind. Let's continue.
Mahmood Kaleel read a letter from Mahmood Kaleel's wife yesterday, suggesting he had been kidnapped. Oh, the irony. Oh, the irony of a man who cheers for actual kidnappings by a terrorist group claiming he has been kidnapped because the legal process is now kicking him out of the country for being a supporter of that terror group.
My husband was kidnapped from our home. And
she's an American citizen, by the way. She's an American citizen. Let's just continue.
it's shameful that the United States government continues to hold him because he stood for the rights and lives of his people. I demand his immediate release and return to our family. His disappearance has devastated our lives. Every day without him is filled with uncertainty, not just for me, but for our entire family and community.
I'm sorry, the family of Idan Alexander, the American citizen being held in Gaza by Hamas, would like to have a word. I've yet to see the Democrats tweeting out, "Free Idan Alexander," an actual American citizen being held by an actual honest-to-God terror group, kidnapped into Gaza. And yet here we have this lawyer for the wife reading a letter in which she claims that he was kidnapped. Nope, that's called the legal process taking place. Right now, Kaleel is being held in Louisiana pending deportation. The U.S. District Court judge, a guy named Jesse Furman, who is heavily associated, shall we say, with family members of the left, his family members worked for the Obama administration, set a schedule on Wednesday for the lawyers to present written arguments later this week. He said his order to keep Kaleel in an immigration detention facility in Louisiana was due not to the merits of any arguments, but to provide time to address the important issues his case raises. It's unclear where the case is going to be held. We have heard he has a green card. It is not totally clear whether that is true or not. We'll assume that he does for the sake of argument. Again, well, the real question in all this is how this guy got in the country in the first place. Like, who is actually analyzing the student visas? Who decided that America desperately needs someone who worked for the UNRWA in the United States to study at the Columbia School of International and Public Affairs, where apparently his only job was to agitate on behalf of Hamas?
Look at the bait and switch there. Terrorist, 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 support terrorism, support terrorism. There's no evidence, there's no proof, he doesn't give it examples, he simply just uses, again, the missile words, terrorism, anti-Semite, racist, homophobic. He uses them as missiles to obliterate arguments. He doesn't want to actually grapple with the conversation. Hey, bro, there's a lot of people who see what's going on, and they see the difference in power between Palestinians, and the state of Israel. They see the carnage, the destruction, the obliteration, liquidating city blocks, blocking humanitarian aid, war crimes, again, on both sides. But it's only you. You're the one pointing the finger saying, take him away. You're the one violating the First Amendment, not only by law, but by principle. And there's a lot of people who will say, oh, but the head of the Department of Homeland Security has the right to arbitrarily revoke green cards for whatever reason. Sure. But does it make it just? Would you agree with that argument if I switched the roles a little bit? Let's play the game. Let's play the game. Would you do it if we switched the roles a little bit? Right? What if the what if the perspective of the United States government was that Israel gone too far, and if you support Israel, you're supporting genocide, therefore deported. If you're a Jewish American, deported. Because that's essentially what's happening here. Because Mahmood Kaleel is a Palestinian. His brothers, his sisters, his family are being killed. Our government is supporting that, facilitating it. And if you dare speak out, we silence you. What does that say for the next guy? That stifles freedom of speech, right? Because if you're starting to deport people for, let's say he did support Hamas, right? Let's say he did say that what Hamas was doing was justified. Would that still allow to facilitate his deportation? Do you really believe in the First Amendment? And Ben Shapiro doesn't. Ben Shapiro does not care for the First Amendment. He does not care for the First Amendment. He only cares for the First Amendment as long as he is allowed to say things that are uncomfortable. If he can say the things that are uncomfortable, it's free speech. It's just free speech, bro. Wait, you're saying I can't say the R slur in the N word? Dude, it's free speech. Bro, it's edgy humor, dude. Don't worry. But if you dare criticize Israel, you'll get deported. You will get deported. That's the difference. It's the difference of standards. And Ben Shapiro, since he is on the receiving end of the benefits, he doesn't care for the violations of the First Amendment. He does not care. And that's why someone like Ben Shapiro has lost all respect from me, because you're a snake. You are a snake. You are a lying rat, because the only reason you're not seeing it for what it is because you are biased. The facts don't care about your feelings, Ben. Sorry.
Amazing stuff. We'll get to more on this in a moment. First, imagine a terrible scenario where you or your loved ones face a threat, and your first instinct might be to resort to. Meanwhile, Democrats embracing him full scale. a person who may in fact become the next mayor of New York. This person apparently is running second in polls to Andrew Cuomo right now. A person named Zohran Kwame Mamdani went to an event yesterday at which Borders Are Tom Homan was. And he started trying to yell at Tom Homan. So first of all, I do like the hold me back element of this. Hold me back. If he got within an arm's length of Tom Homan would eviscerate him. Tom Homan is one of the scariest people I've ever been in a room with. We were in a room with him last week. And he is simultaneously one of the nicest people and one of the scariest people you will ever meet. Here is Zohran confronting the Trump border czar over his immigration policy, including the policy surrounding Mahmood Kaleel.
How many more New Yorkers? How many more New Yorkers will you detain? How many more New Yorkers without trial? Do you believe in the First Amendment? Do you believe in the First Amendment, Tom Homan?
Yeah, hold him back. Hold him back. Okay, if Democrats want to do this, I guess they can do this all day long. Meanwhile, negotiations
if Democrats want to do this, we could do this. Democrats doesn't even grapple with the question. Do you believe in the First Amendment? Do you think this applies to the First Amendment? And it does completely. There are a bunch of Republicans who cope and say, oh, green card holders and non-citizens don't have the First Amendment. In the Constitution, it says the government cannot make any laws blocking the people, not citizens, because again, in the Constitution, it differentiates between the two. The people. You have to legitimately explain to me why this is any different than any other extremely politically incorrect opinion that someone could hold. You know what? And then this is something that nails my argument. Here's a clip of Ben Shapiro 7 years ago talking about free speech on college campuses. And let's just see the type of words he uses and see how much of a fucking hypocrite he is. And again, it makes me angry because it's like, how far have you fallen, my friend? Like, you are just a complete moralist person. You have no morals.
This does bring up one final point that I want to make in the long period of time that I have to discuss, and that is the problem with a legislative body such as yours trying to draw lines specifically about what hate speech constitutes. Because the fact is that one of the reasons groups like Antifa show up is not because they know who I am. It's because they have been told by people that I am promulgating hate speech, which is utterly false and utterly untrue. There are people who say vile things and with whom I disagree. Among them, people like Milo Yiannopoulos, who sent me a picture of a black baby on the day of my child's birth because I wasn't sufficiently standing up for the white population, supposedly. But that does not mean that the legislature gets to decide what hate speech is. I've been labeled a promulgator of hate speech when I was the #1 target of hate speech, according to the ADL, among the journalistic community in 2016. So let me suggest that as a legislature, your chief job is to ensure that my taxpayer dollars in this state go toward making sure that people like me and people with whom I disagree get to speak in places like college campuses, and not toward regulating what speech you find good and what speech you find bad, because it's a really dangerous business, and there's speech I don't like, there's speech you don't like, but if we can't agree that there is a difference between speech and violence, we're not going to be able to have a free state, let alone a free country. Thanks.
Let's make a differentiation between speech and violence. Let's not start creating words and defining what hate speech is. And you're making the same argument as me, Ben. Like, this is why I honestly don't like Ben Shapiro at all now, because it's like, this is something where it's like, you're either with me or you're my enemy. Something with freedom of speech is you either believe in freedom of speech or you don't. And me, as an American, someone who thinks that freedom of speech is something that should be held to the highest regard, something that we should never hold, because they pretend like these rights are just going to be here forever. There's like floating concepts that we can constantly draw from. No, we have to fight for our rights every single day. And the weapons that these false humans, these fake fucking phony actors use in order to erode your rights is the danger words, the scary stuff. Terrorism, racism, homophobia. We have to stop this. We have to stop this. Because we need to have people safe. And I mean, Ben Shapiro sees right through this argument in every single scenario. But the only one he doesn't see it is Israel. And it's blatant. And if I were to say, hey, Ben, you are Israel first. You're not America first because you want to erode American rights. That's the first thing. Right, so that's just an objective fact. I now am deemed anti-Semitic based off of the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, which was signed into law by Donald Trump and a bunch of other Republican politicians. All of them. The only one who hasn't done that is Thomas Massie, because he's a principled person. I've talked about the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism before. It literally includes Bible verses as anti-Semitic. So that in itself, as a Christian, completely voids the entire definition that they created. It's something where it's like you either believe in freedom of speech as a principle or you don't. And Ben Shapiro obviously doesn't, and he's a lying snake because he built his entire career off of it. That's what I want to talk about today, because this is something that's got me really fucking riled up. Mainly because, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like Ben Shapiro, he's one of the main fighters for freedom of speech. He was one of the main propagators for the right-wing charge to kind of take over culture again. And I think his role was really important. But for some reason, he wants to throw it all away for Israel. I mean, he wants to throw it all away. I mean, I'm not going to blame him. I mean, it's his family, it's his culture, it's his heritage. But it's like, I'm an American, so quite frankly, I don't give a fuck about Israel. I don't give a fuck about your religion. I care about my country and my rights. If you want to come in and attack me, you want to come and attack my rights, fuck you. Ben Shapiro, of course, not like Jews in general. Because that's another thing where it's like, if you have a gremlin level IQ, something will happen from a particular group, and then you'll be like, oh, I hate that group, or I hate the entire country of Israel. It's like, no, dude, like, a huge chunk of people in Israel disagree with what's going on in Gaza. So it has nothing to do with me being anti-Israel. My first name is Israel. I'm literally named after your country. And it has nothing to do with that. You know, fake allegations of anti-Semitism will be thrown at you for saying this type of stuff. And it's pretty disheartening. It's just disgusting to see that someone like Ben Shapiro still gets support from conservatives, so-called America First conservatives. But that's it for today. I'm done talking. I'm just riled up. It's just pretty sad. Peace.